All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And thank you to those who are continually joining. Welcome and thanks for coming to the CFLeads Community Leadership 101 webinar. I'm Kelly Alexander, and I'm pleased to serve as CFLeads Network Engagement Manager, and so thrilled that you're here for this 1-hour introduction to community leadership. We cannot hear or see you. You can only hear and see us. So let us know with questions in the Q&A box. We're looking at the chat box now. I believe you're unable to use it at this moment, but we're looking into that. And please feel free to use that Q&A box for those questions. If you do have some technical issues, you can go ahead and join us by phone. And note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording link, and it'll be up on our YouTube channel. So to get us started today, it's my pleasure to welcome Megan Cummings, Senior Vice President of Strategy, Impact, and Operations with CFLeads.
Thanks so much, Kelly, and welcome to everyone that's joining us today. We are just thrilled that you're here. We have participants from 27 states with us today, and we're certainly excited. CFLeads works with community foundations across the country, so having 27 states represented today is really wonderful. If you are new to us, I want to start off by telling you a little bit about CFLeads. We have some frequent flyers on the call today, and we also have people that are brand new to our work, so I wanted to give you a little bit about our organization. So CFLeads is the country's national network of community foundations, and we're committed to community leadership. There are more than 900 community foundations across the country, and we think and we know that they are a powerful catalyst for change. And through CFLeads, hundreds of community foundations from across the US come together to strengthen their leadership muscle, share field innovations, and tackle the key issues of our time. And we know you're taking time out of your day to join us today, and I'm sure you're working on all these things throughout your day and how you show up for your community. We think by unleashing the power of community foundations, we can really speed the pace of change for positive outcomes in our community. So we're so excited to serve you and partner with you. A little bit more about CFLeads. We offer a portfolio of programs to kind of superpower your journey. We have executive leadership programs for individuals and a variety of learning cohorts and issue networks that meet you and your foundation right where you are and partner with you so you can achieve your best outcomes for your community. Isn't that why we all do this work every day, is to help our communities? I have been with CFLeads for about 6 months now, but I spent the previous 13 years at my local community foundation, which was the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And about 5 years before I left there, we started joining CFLeads cohorts. We were in a racial equity cohort and then an economic mobility cohort. And I can't tell you how those specific moments in time, we really saw our work take off. It just came alive when we were exposed to the network of other community foundations doing this work, the access to national experts about this, resources, just thought sharing and that connection. And it really just sped our work along. So big believer in CFLeads before I even got to come to the team. So our team loves community foundations, and many of us came directly from community foundations, large and small, from across the country, rural and urban. And we're here to partner with you on your journey as you do this important work in the community. So today you have signed up to learn more about community leadership. That's really what we love to partner with Community Foundation on. And really quick, we're going to do a poll to see where you are in your community leadership, how you're applying this at your foundations, and how familiar you are with the concepts of community leadership. So if you can just take just a second and rate your knowledge of community leadership concepts, and we'll see where the group is. All 80 of us, we'll see kind of where we fall on this. See. Are the poll results ready? Here we go. All right, a nice spread here. So some people are somewhat familiar and familiar. Okay, great. Nice little bell curve there. Congratulations. That gives us a place really to start on how we talk about community leadership today. So I'm going to walk you through the framework, and then we will have a real treat for you, which is we're going to hear from a foundation that has really put these different community leadership competencies into practice. So there's a traditional way of showing impact in our foundations. And I would say a majority of us on the call came from this, where impact is assets. And we all talk about a very traditional way of showing impact. What's the endowment size? And of course, assets are important, just as grant making and DAPs are important. They are key cornerstones to any community foundation. But today we're going to discuss how we can pull all the levers of influence that are at our disposal as a community foundation to achieve better community outcomes. So this is a little bit of how we define community leadership. The Community Foundation is a community partner that creates a better future for all by pursuing the community's greatest opportunities and addressing the most critical challenges, inclusively uniting people, institutions, and resources from throughout the community and producing significant, widely shared, and lasting results. And let me break that down a little bit for you. When we say we're a community partner, this acknowledges that the Community Foundation does not act in isolation. It acts in concert with other community members, sometimes taking the lead, sometimes following, and sometimes paving the way for new leaders. We want to create a better future for all. This acknowledges that Community Foundation's constituency is the entire community. Every issue, every cause it embraces has some connection to the greater good, while being mindful about how race, class, culture, and power influence and affect decisions across our community. When we talk about pursuing the community's greatest opportunities and addressing the most critical challenges, we acknowledge that the Community Foundation can be counted on to pursue the things that matter most to the community, no matter how challenging or difficult they are. And we all know we have some challenging and difficult issues in each of our communities. When we talk about inclusively uniting people, institutions, and resources, this is about how we go about our business in the open and ensuring broad participation. It also recognizes that the Community Foundation is well suited to assemble and leverage resources. And finally, when we talk about producing significant, widely shared, and lasting results, this acknowledges that the Community Foundation looks beyond quick fixes and innovative pilot projects, and that it has the staying power to reach long-term results. I bet you can think of things you're working on right now, and these are not problems that are solved in a few quarters. These are problems that take years and years to see a measurable impact on, and they're really important. So in 2019, we did a research project. You can advance the slide. We did a research project to understand the environment in which community foundations are working and where they can add further value. About 152 community foundations participated, and they were from all shapes and sizes all around the country. And this study really showed us that we can no longer focus solely on good grant making and serving as charitable banks. Community foundations from coast to coast are leaning into the many other actions they can take to build strong communities and push for better outcomes. And so you can see on this community leadership compass, when we talk about this idea of going all in for these issues and leveraging all the power that community foundations bring to the table, this is a little bit of what it looks like. There's three really critical parts: insisting on racial equity, amplifying community voice, and influencing public policy and systems that are just foundational to all this work. And that's really what that study told us in 2019. Since 2019, We've been really working on this model and practicing it within communities all around the nation. And one thing we really want to introduce today are these 5 competencies of leadership that we feel are such important levers to get this community work done. You can see them in that second circle there, those 5 competencies. So when we talk about the 5 competencies, here's what we mean. You can advance the slide. So these are 5 things we really think community foundations can lean on to pull all those levers of influence. The first is engaging residents to hear their concerns, to lift up their ambitions and harness their talents. No longer can we write mission statements and strategies in a boardroom with 10 people, right? This is really about going out into the community and understanding what the day-to-day challenges and aspirations are of your community, and make sure they are engaged in the work of the community foundation and your trajectory and how you solve problems. So engaging residents is one of the first elements of effective community leadership. The second is commissioning and disseminating local data and research to help understand the nuances of community challenges and provide information to help solve problems. When I was at the Community Foundation in Cincinnati, we had a very specific focus on Black women and their economic mobility. And one of the pivotal things we did with that work was really look at our local data. And that local data told us that 49% of Black women in our MSA were making less than $15 an hour. And we could really pinpoint what areas, what occupational sectors they were in. And that just helped us so much take this massive challenge of how to unleash the potential Black women in our community and really get down to a granular level to understand the data. So the data is a really key piece in this community leadership. The third part is working across sectors, because the challenges facing communities are multifaceted and interconnected and cannot be solved by any one entity or sector. You might have this similar experience when tough challenges come up in our community. People just look to the philanthropic sector sometimes and say, okay, hey, charities, go and fix this. It's like, that's what your job is. And I think if we think about how government and businesses and philanthropy can work together, we all realize that they bring tremendous strengths and assets that if any one sector pursued it on their own, what a shame to leave all those other talents and resources on the table. I'd like you to reflect on some challenges or some big wins your community has had and think about how those were solved or tackled. I'm sure it involved bringing many sectors together. The fourth is shaping policies and systems. We have to recognize that government systems have significant impact on the lives of every resident. And sometimes when we're able to change a law locally or at our state, that has staying power that lasts generations. It far outlasts any grant cycle when we can really get to the systems change, both big P policy and small P policy. We can really see some lasting change for the issues we care about most. And finally, marshaling resources from public and private sources. Think about what your grant budget is for a year. Think about what that is in your foundation. Is that enough to solve any one problem? When I think about marshaling resources, I think about tapping into government funding, to national foundations, maybe better partnering with your donors to co-invest on the problems that are most important to your community. So when I think about marshaling resources, I'm thinking about pulling this tremendous lever of how we can unleash more resources to solve our biggest issues. So as you reflect on these 5 different practices, just think about how all of these work together to address some of the most difficult problems in your community. And think when your community has big wins, how each one of these competencies have showed up in that solution. I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from our audience today. I can't see the full chat, Rachel or Anita. Are there any questions coming?
We don't have any in the Q&A box right now. I believe there was some about the chat that is available and ready to use too, and you can also use the Q&A box.
Am I back? I think I was kicked off briefly.
We're all good here, Megan.
Okay, great.
It looks like we have one from Kate, and Kate says, "Oh, how quickly can these slides be available?" We will send them.
Oh.
After. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can definitely send them out after this webinar.
Great. All right, perfect. Well, if there's no other questions about this section, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. But right now, I'm sure you're thinking, okay, these concepts sound great. That sounds wonderful, but how do we get started with that? So I'm absolutely thrilled to turn it over to our colleagues at the Innovia Foundation right now, Shelley O'Quinn and Molly Sanchez. We're so lucky to have Shelley on our CFLeads board as well. And I would love for you to talk about how you've put these competencies into practice in your own community to see better outcomes. So Shelley and Molly, take it away.
Now I'm unmuted. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are located. It's still morning out here on the West Coast. It's great to be with you. I'm Shelley O'Quinn. I'm CEO of Innovia Foundation, and I have with me Molly Sanchez, who is our Chief Community Investment Officer and oversees all of our strategic initiatives and grant programs and basically any money that goes into community. So we have about 20 minutes to share with you our journey over the last 7 years. And so we have a lot of information we're going to condense, and we're really looking forward to the Q&A time that we have with you. You know, Innovia Foundation is located in Eastern Washington and North Idaho. We serve a 20-county region, 10 counties in Eastern Washington, 10 in North Idaho. We're about 40,000 square miles, and just over 1.2 million people are in our region. We are urban and rural. So 2 of our counties, Spokane and Kootenai County, are our primary urban communities, hosting about 750, 800,000 folks, and then the other 18 counties have everyone else. So a really nice mix of urban rural. We also are a very conservative region. If you've paid attention to politics, you know that North Idaho tends to be incredibly conservative. And our, I would say our urban communities may be a little bit more moderate, but we're definitely in a region that has some interesting political dynamics. So that's who we are, the environment in which we serve. You know, our mission is to ignite generosity that transforms lives and communities. And we really do live that out in the work that we do every day. I believe that our strategic framework was shared out with you. And I hope that we will reference it several times today. And so I hope that you'll have a chance to look at and just would invite some conversations and questions around it. When we started thinking about how we'd present today, we thought we'd start with by sharing with you what we were doing in community leadership in 2017. So there you go. So prior to 2017, we were really doing very little. We had one initiative that we were working on, Hilliard Youth Collaborative, that was really a result of the fact that we had really low graduation rates in our region, and the community said we have to do something about it. Other than that, our involvement in community leadership was basically non-existent. So what changed? What changed is the foundation hired a new leader, and I joined, and I came out of working in community leadership for basically the 20 years prior to joining the foundation. I had been an elected official for 5 years. I had worked at our chamber and worked in public policy. So I was really comfortable in this space of community leadership. And it was really how I operated. And I would say the other thing is during my interview, I will often reference this. I say that I received permission from the board to make some really significant changes at the foundation. And one of the board members asked the question during the interview. He said, "Shelley, will you be board?" And I said, "That's the best question that you've asked me. If you want to continue to be a traditional community foundation, I am not your person. But if you want to be a transformational community foundation that's really working on making transformational changes in our region, that is focused on being a change agent, I said, then I'm your person. But when I came into the foundation in 2017, I will tell you, as you saw on that slide, we had a lot of work to do to transition from that transactional, traditional community foundation to one focused on community leadership. And it didn't happen overnight. So as we go through our sharing today, if I can leave you with one word that I want you to embrace, it's that it's a journey. And where we were in 2017 versus 19 versus 20, and now today in 2024 is very different, and it's all built. Everything that we've done is built on, and then the more that we've leaned in our community leadership work, the more we've traveled our journey, I would say the faster that we've been able to move in that work. But what did we first have to do? When I took over the foundation, my predecessor had a very different management style. And so the first work that we had to do was actually internal. We had to do a systems change. As you saw, we serve 20 counties, yet every single person at the foundation only had a desktop. No one had laptops. So, and we weren't on the cloud. We couldn't access our own systems if we were in a community 2 hours away, meeting with a donor, or meeting with a nonprofit partner. So we took all of our systems online to the cloud, which actually served us great in 2020. We had to do staff training. We had to do board training. We really had to take a look at internally, were we ready to lean into community leadership? I will also say that for me, I had to do training. While I'd done community leadership within externally in the community, and I was very comfortable in that space, I was newer to the community foundation field. I'd worked there 10 years prior for 1 year, but I don't think that counted very much as saying it gave me exposure, but it didn't actually give me exposure to community leadership in the context of community foundation. So for those of you who have never gone through CFLeads, Executive Leadership Institutes, whether it's for CEOs, vice presidents, this is my plug for you, that I had another community foundation peer who connected me to that training through CFLeads. And it was honestly one of the best things I did, because as we were working on doing that transformational shift internally within our own organization, I was able to have those conversations with my peers through the CFLeads ELI program. And, we would go and meet in person. I would share with them my challenge. We'd go back and implement, and I'd come back and share a different challenge. And so it was really one of the best opportunities I had as we did that internal journey. So we looked at systems. We also did a rebrand, which ultimately ended up in a name change, because as I was leaving elected office, I had a lot of comments that were saying, Shelley, congratulations, but where are you going? I'm like, how do people not know about the Community Foundation? Everyone should know about the Community Foundation. So we embarked on what we thought was a marketing campaign that quickly transitioned into a rebrand for us. And branding is more than colors and names. It's actually understanding who you are to community. And so in order to understand who our community want us to be, we had to ask. So we engaged donors, we engaged nonprofits, community partners, that some of which we had relationships with before, but really they'd never been asked about, they had a relationship with us, but they hadn't been asked, who do you want us to be? We said, who do you want your community foundation to be 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years into the future and beyond? So we received that feedback into that process, and that's where our new vision and mission came from. Previously, we had a slogan, connecting people who care with causes that matter, which is great, but it really didn't say who we were, what we were going to do as an organization. Out of that rebrand, which we basically a year from the day I was hired, we announced a new name and vision for the organization. Just so you know, the I, N, and O reflects Inland Northwest. It also comes out of the word innovate or innovare, which is Italian for, something like innovate. And then via is the Latin word for way. And so our name literally translates for us innovative way. So as we think about how we do our work, we want to do it thinking outside the box. We then transitioned into year 2. Okay, great. We had pitched a vision to our community. We had done a lot of systems change internally. Now what? Because nothing that we were doing really reflected that vision that we had just pitched. And we knew that was really important in order for it to be legitimate, we actually had to, our actions had to reflect who we said that we wanted to be and who we are going to be. And so that's when we really started our external work. To guide that, we worked both internally and with our board on creating our strategic framework, which again, we sent out. We did a lot of R&D for this, which is rip off and duplicate. Okay, research and development and rip off and duplicate. So if you look at our organization, you will see many of you who are on here. I saw the names popping up as you were all saying who is here. We stole from you. We stole from your organizations. Our leadership councils came from Oregon. Our core team came from Arizona. You'll see Launch Northwest, that came from Buffalo and Syracuse. You look across our organization and we stole from the great work that was happening around the country, but we made it ours. We said, we knew what our mission vision were and we wanted to live into that. And so we researched somewhere between 55, 60 community foundations and what they were doing. And then also, and innovatively doing. And then we said, okay, how are we going to apply that learning into what we're doing as a foundation? That's where our strategic framework came out. We had to do board work. We had to do board training. We had to help the board understand why were we making this big shift and how are we showing up in community? And so before we would do anything, and Molly's going to talk about some of what it looked like in action. But for example, census, before we did that, we did bring in speakers to talk about the importance of census to our region and to our board. So it wasn't just an internal conversation with the board about why we were doing what we're doing in community leadership. By the way, that framework that you saw the picture of earlier that Megan showed out, we took our board through that. We wanted them to understand where we were and most likely where we were not in our community leadership journey so that they could understand where we were, our long-term vision of where we were going. So we did take that. So we did board work, board training, continue to do staff training. Probably the biggest shift, which I know Megan mentioned as well, is looking at what impact means. I came in with a very clear definition that I didn't care how much money we had as a foundation or how many grants we gave away, because at the end of the day, if we were not impacting lives and communities, it didn't matter. And so we shifted our model. Again, I stole this from Buffalo, that we view our North Star as impact. What is the impact we are having on communities, which then increases our relevance in community, which then increases our visibility in community, which then at the end of the day increases our resources. And I very clearly told the board, you'll have the number of funds and you'll have our asset size in your board packet in the financials every month. We are not going to focus on that as outcomes. That's not what we're going to look at every day. If it ever goes in the wrong direction, we will. But that's not going to be our focus. Our focus is going to be on impact. And I will tell you, in the last 7 years, if you look at the results on a number side, the numbers proved and lived out our focus on impact, because we've actually more than doubled in size just in the last 7 years. And we're 50 years old this year. So there was a lot of work that had to be done internally with systems, with thinking about who we are and understanding how we were going to show up in community to live that out in community leadership. And I want to turn it over to Molly, who has been at the foundation for, I think, 16 years now, who started with the foundation on, or was at the foundation prior to me arriving, and now has spent the last 7 years with us and can give you that show of community leadership in action.
Great. Thanks, Shelley. And hello, everyone. I'm so glad to have this opportunity again to share out today a little bit about the Innovia journey specific to community leadership. As Shelley said, I've had the privilege of working at the foundation for about 16 years now. And so I've been able to see firsthand how we have moved from being a traditional transactional responsive organization to one that really is led by what is community voice and how are we best responding to what community is asking for. one of the examples I like to share out is Innovia was approached in probably around 2020 by a significant regional funder who wanted to grant us dollars to re-grant into the rural communities of Eastern Washington. And our reaction was like, great, we would love to play that role. And we realized at that point, we didn't have the relationship in community that we thought we thought we had in order to be effective. So we reached out and we said, hey, we want to re-grant funding to rural communities. And we heard crickets because there was a lot of distrust. People had no idea who we were. We were the organization based in Spokane and we had no relationship. So that was really eye-opening for us, and really where we realized we have a lot of work to do. And that's what we've been doing since then. And again, kind of much more significantly since Shelley joined the foundation in 2017. So with that, I am going to share again a little bit more so you can see where we've been at with our journey. Shelley talked about prior to 2017, not doing a lot in the 5 pillar areas. So here, when we get to 2020, you can see in that column a lot of the progress we've made that's been really exciting. And I think one of the key things I think for people to know is it's important to start somewhere, because once you start dipping your toe in the water, you're going to find that community will become more engaged. They'll start to see the impact that will build upon itself. And each one of these things that we've done has really been something that has spurred from a previous leadership activity. So as an example, early in 2018, we were able to hire a director of research, and that really was transformational for the organization. We received grant funding 3 years in order to get that position on board. And being able to connect data and research to what community voices say they want is really is catalytic. So communities can say what they want. We can come in, help them back it up with data and research, and be able to come up with solutions that we then can get co-funders behind. And again, you can see how everything kind of builds and grows from that. So hiring the director of research allowed us to enter into a health research survey in what's called the Lewis-Clark Valley of our region. It was a 7-county survey. From that, we gathered data about what's kind of the health status situation folks in that region, working with local hospitals. We then were able to do a data walk. So being in community, going to those different communities, sharing out the data that we learned, and grounding that in local voice. So doing that kind of work allowed us to deepen relationships, again, in those rural counties where we really hadn't been before. From that, we were able to develop out a broader group of local volunteers who knew us and said, we want to come alongside you as Innovia and be partners with you to help you work with us in our community. So that kind of was the precursor to our leadership councils. We'll talk about a little bit later on, but developing out those relationships, engaging residents, again, really spurred from kind of starting with the data. That also led us to some significant community initiatives. We have an initiative launched in 2018, Opening Books, Opening Doors, which was responding to a local community who was very concerned about what are the 3rd grade reading levels for kids in their elementary schools, and knowing that's a significant indicator of future educational success. Again, going to the data, then we brought on co-funders and launched the Opening Books, Opening Doors initiative to bring along community members to help improve those rates and come alongside schools and students and make that again that cross-sector participation in community initiatives. Similar to that was the Zone Project, which is a project started in 2019 aimed at improving outcomes for underserved youth in a low-income neighborhood in Spokane. We're still doing that work today, started with significant co-funding and now involves a broad network of youth-serving organizations. So again, pulling partners together, pulling co-funding together, and again, that work is still continuing. Our Census 2020 work is really where we were able to kind of start working more into public policy. And again, that built upon what we had been doing earlier. What we were really excited about with this Census 2020 was it was really the first time we had an opportunity to kind of step into that policy space, but do it in a way that was really non-political, and we were able to get cross-partisan support to fund a census position at the foundation, because they knew that we were positioned to reach out to a diverse group of people and communities who could come in and weigh in on census and ensure a successful census project for this region. So we had, again, the co-founded position. And then the other key piece related to our community leadership journey is disaster response. And that started, as I'm sure all of you have experienced, with COVID. But when COVID hit, we were fortunate to be in the position that we had created those relationships already across the region. So when there were significant national funders, when there were regional funders and local funders who had dollars that they wanted to get quickly to disaster COVID response, they came to us and they said, we know you have these relationships and you can get these dollars infused quickly into communities based on where communities say they need those dollars the most. So that was, again, kind of the precursor to our disaster response work, which we've continued to do with natural disasters that have impacted our region since then. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to look at Shelley. Is there anything in those areas that we missed that you want to highlight more?
No, I think the only thing, just to give you all an example, in 2017, when right after I started, a couple months after I started, we had the unfortunate event of a school shooting in our region. And I looked at the team and I said, so what do you all do here? I knew how I would respond as a elected county commissioner, and the school shooting was actually in my district. But I didn't know how the foundation would respond. And so we let United Way lead that response. But then you fast forward to 2020, it was actually United Way and all of our local philanthropic partners that then asked us to lead the philanthropy response to COVID. And it was because of that relationship building. And again, I cannot overemphasize enough that it was a journey. And we put the dates in here so that you could actually see that, it didn't all go from, suddenly all this happened in 2020, that it all built on itself. And as Molly said, you have to just start somewhere and then it builds. I would also say that a big part of this work, besides starting somewhere, is you have to show up. If you are not in community, you will not know your community. So another key difference between my predecessor and I is that he just believed everyone needed to be at their desk from 8 to 5. And I looked at the team and I said, if you're at your desk more than 50% of the time, you're not doing your job. You need to be in community. You need to be meeting with community partners. You need to be, we serve a 20 county region and a small staff. Like, you need to be in community, meeting elected officials, meeting those grassroots folks who are leading change in their community, the volunteers, the nonprofits. Get to know people, get to know your community. And that, again, those relationships are then what also help build that trust, so that when you do actually have an opportunity to step up and serve the community, whether it's in disaster or whether it's to partner alongside a community priority, the relationships are there and you can make it happen.
Thanks, Shelley. Okay, so I'm going to fly through the next few slides, even though these are probably all the most fun because they're kind of some specific examples of projects we've had an opportunity to be involved in. We wanted to go through all of them, but there were just so many. So we want to start by highlighting our initiatives that align with our strategic framework that Shelley mentioned earlier. So we have 3 focus areas: igniting generosity, vibrant and sustainable communities, and ensuring every person thrives. So under igniting generosity, we have launched our 5% campaign, which is a transfer of wealth. We funded a transfer of wealth study. That study showed us that there's $32 billion set to transfer from one generation to the next over the next 10 years. So we have a campaign out to try to help communities capture just 5% of that abundance for their region, to invest that back, and that's igniting generosity so that there will be sustainable endowed funding for communities across our region in perpetuity. Community Heart and Soul falls under our pillar of vibrant and sustainable communities. We have just selected 7 rural communities in our region who will embark on a 2-year process of convening community members, identifying what's important, what they love about their community, what's their vision, and what's their plan for helping that vision come to fruition. So we are able to provide funding and technical assistance for those communities to do that. Again, our first cohort is 7 rural communities. We anticipate we'll launch our next cohort in the spring. And then we have our Launch Northwest initiative that is a long-term initiative. It is really, it's a multi-pronged effort that starts with a promised scholarship, but is really also about providing wraparound services and support to youth and families to ensure that they get to graduation and are successful in post-high school career training and attainment, ensuring every child travels their best journey to career success and post-high school success and what they want to achieve. Shelley's going to talk about that a little bit later, because this really is the initiative that ties closely with our economic mobility work. Again, super high level on other community leadership initiatives. The J.C. Barron Flour Mill. 2 years ago, if somebody would have said, "Hey, Innovia, what would it be like to own a historic flour mill?" We would have said, "Well, I have no idea what you're talking about." But the community of Oakdale, Washington, 400 people said, "This historic Washington, this Washington historic flour mill is for sale. We don't want to lose it to a developer or somebody else. Innovia, can you help us?" So Innovia stepped in. We worked with the community to purchase the mill. We are now transferring it over, working with, again, cross-sector support, working with the county ports in that area, community residents, to revitalize and reframe this historic mill for economic development in that community. We hold a series of Courageous Conversations sponsorships. So the upper right corner is one that we did recently about bringing people together to talk about racial healing, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which, as Shelley mentioned, can be challenging conversations in very conservative regions. So we were really proud to be able to sponsor that, and again, have community partners come to the table, even when they disagreed with some of what that conversation was about. And then we also are able to put together an annual leadership summit, which brings together 300 plus of our regional volunteers to increase their leadership capacity for their local communities, and to help connect the resources that Innovia can bring to their community to, again, help them achieve their vision and what they want for their community. Really briefly, I mentioned disaster response and recovery, so I won't spend much more time on that. But recent wildfires, we've been able to respond to that, as well as COVID response. And disaster response is a thing, and it will continue to be, sadly, an ongoing part of our portfolio. But again, people coming to us because they know we can turn dollars around quickly where they're needed most. And then here I'm going to turn it back to Shelley to talk a little bit more about the Launch Northwest initiative.
And I know that we're basically out of time and we want to open up to Q&A. So what I'm going to say here is our Launch Northwest initiative, which actually started in 2019, is our commitment. We believe that in order to have vibrant and sustainable communities, every person has to thrive. And looking at the data in our region, the high rates of poverty, our low median wage compared to the high cost of living, the fact that we have really, really low post-secondary attainment rates, we knew we had to invest an upstream investment into folks in our region to help with that economic mobility. And so it is a promised scholarship, but it's so much more than that. It's a promised scholarship with the wraparound supports. Engage in real life is making sure every kid gets off their screen and engages in real life and has an engagement plan. All it takes is understanding that we can't do this work alone. And it's a big volunteer recruitment campaign for all of our nonprofits. By the way, I need to say all of this is in partnership with the nonprofits in our region, the business partners in our region. FAFSA is actually being led by our business community. So it's really our economic mobility investment in our region. I put in the middle, we went from doing nothing in 2017 around public policy to we have hired a lobbyist this fall or this past summer that we're working with this fall because we have a $5 million legislative ask for our Launch Northwest initiative in this next legislative session. They gave us 500,000 last year, which was awesome, but now we're asking for 5 million. And so again, it built over time. We started in 2019. We are awarding almost $1 million in scholarships this fall in 2024. So it's been a 5-year investment to get to this point.
And I'm going to jump in, and then this will be the last one. Just briefly, obviously, we can't do this work alone. Shelley mentioned the nonprofit partners, as well as, again, 300 volunteers across our region. That when I reflect back to 2012, when, again, we heard crickets when we reached out and said, we want to give you money. So now we have people, this network of community supporters is really what makes this work possible. And so with that, we will stop share.
Wow, that is just incredible work. Thank you for taking us through those years. And what really resonated for me is, this idea that it's a journey. You cannot start with doing 10 things in every category. And it's very iterative work. Sometimes you start one place and you think you know the next 5 steps. And the next 5 steps are completely different and maybe even better than you imagined. So it's iterative, it takes time, and the key thing is just to start somewhere, even if it's just in one category.
And Megan, can I answer? Because this keeps coming up, is the question that is always asked, well, where do we start?
Yeah.
Start with the resources that you have. Yeah. So I would say our big game changer was census. Well, I had the resources in the sense that I had the relationships with all of our elected officials because I just come out of being an elected official. And so I went and asked all of my partners if they would co-fund a position with us based at the Community Foundation, because we had D's and R's, elected officials, based at the Community Foundation. So it could be a cross-partisan endeavor. And so start with your resources. Are your resources relationships? Are your resources assets? Do you have an initiative in your community already that you are already involved in, but you could put it on steroids? So when you say, where do I start? Start there. Then that is where you start building and your journey starts, because then it goes into from a co-funding to a public policy initiative to then that opens the door to, other opportunities. We got $11 million of ARPA money for our Launch Northwest initiative because of relationships and because we had proven to the community that when we said we were going to do something, we could deliver. And so start with what you currently have as your assets.
Great advice. And we all have assets. As you look at those 5 areas, what are you naturally already doing in there and building on those strengths? We have a lot of great questions coming in, but one question came in through the registration. So I want to start with that one, then I'll get to a few in the chat. So do you have any tips or strategies on hosting conversations with community leaders or community members to learn more about their needs, then finding solutions? And this would fit under that competency of engaging residents to inform our work. How did you start with that?
We started showing up. We started attending chamber meetings in communities. We started attending Rotary meetings. We started having meetings with elected officials, and we just started asking, what are you working on in your community? What's important to you? We just started showing up. And it was through those conversations then about asking people, what's going on here? Like, what should I know about what's happening in Oakdale, or what's happening in Grangeville, or even in City of Spokane? We started showing up. We started showing up at those community meetings where you can knock out 10 meetings at one chamber meeting, just saying. So start showing up at those places that the community is showing up and having those conversations, because then that allows you to develop a relationship, which then when you have an opportunity to present itself, you can make a phone call and open a door.
I would also just add
sometimes we get,
sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Molly.
A super quick one to add. In addition to that, finding opportunities to use data to set the table, and things don't have to be, you know, a major research project or anything like that, but looking at what are open source research data points to just come in and host a conversation in the community around, hey, this is what, you know, the census is telling us. How does this resonate with you? Is this really how you're experiencing your community? And that's a great conversation starter.
What a great point, Molly. And I think sometimes we get so caught up that that has to be formalized, and it has to be a series, and we have to announce all these dates. And sometimes it just doesn't have to be formal. It can be very casual and organic and still get great information from your community. We have a great question here from Anna Brewer. For current staff, how do individual roles need to change, as well as workflows that no longer align, you know, as you start to operate differently and embrace this community leadership framework? How do you translate that change for each staff person? How did you go about doing that?
So I'm going to say, first of all, everyone on your team does community leadership. This is not a position.
That's right.
So we actually completely reorged, and actually multiple times. I think we change up our org structure and do shifting almost every yearly, quite frankly, because one, we're growing, but two, because of the size of the region we serve, we had to make sure that people understood, you know, if Molly's driving 2 hours to have meetings in Lewiston, and she oversees our grant program, but there's a donor down there, she's also going to meet with donors. And Aaron, who oversees our donor side of the house, if he's going down, you know, if he's driving, you know, 2 hours to Sandpoint and he's meeting with donors, but there are also nonprofit partners that we need to connect with, we connect with them. So we really changed that and shifted focus and worked on tearing down silos. I will say COVID helped us tear down silos, because it forced us to have we got, I think, what did we put, $4 million out in the first 6 weeks. So our donor services team, they all became grant makers. And so honestly, what we had started putting into practice through that kind of response, actually that just tore down those rest of those silos. But we rewrote job descriptions to make sure that people understood that everyone on our team, including our core team, which are the in and out of the money, everyone plays a role in community leadership. Everybody.
Yeah, everyone plays their role in community leadership, and our boards are a big part of that. So there's a question a little bit about governance, but I think this is a huge topic that I hear across community foundations, is how do we get our boards on board for community leadership? So the question is, beyond selection of a new community leadership-minded CEO, what are the key governance decisions that supported Innovia to develop a practice of community leadership? And then, Shelley, I'd also like to add another question onto that. How do you start shifting that board from measuring, you know, widgets per quarter, grants in, grants out, to really understanding this work that's a little bit less concrete and takes longer to see results? How was that board journey for you? So the governance decisions, and then, you know, shifting that mindset in the board.
I'm going to say first on the shifting the mindset, it's really not as hard as you think it is. I actually told the board stories about how measuring funds and dollars is a game that could actually be misleading. And because we were, for example, we were evaluating our staff and the number of funds that they were setting up. When a donor came in the door, we would help them set up 5 new funds when they really just needed 1. And so I presented to them how the games that could be played, you know, when dollars were being passed through us, because we have, for example, a private foundation here that sometimes needs to accept money through us in order to have it go out in the community. Well, guess what? That's a really great way to show that you had a couple more million coming in if you're not actually separating it out and differentiating. So I showed how some games could be played, not intentionally, but if you're measuring the wrong thing, and you're measuring your staff on the wrong thing, and that happens to be on numbers, the numbers can be messed with. On community impact, I then also talked about you do have to build in short wins. You have to celebrate the relationships. You have to celebrate your We still have a competitive grants program, annual grants program. We add a connection to mission moment at the top of our board meeting, and we bring in our nonprofits to share about the work that they're doing. So you do have your short wins. At the same time, you're investing in the long term. We're a forever organization. So there's that piece of it. I will say I also started challenging the board on their makeup of the board. I didn't do that by saying, you guys need to diversify and maybe some of you need to roll off. No, you don't do it that way. You bring in a really fantastic board training person. I brought in Les Wallace, 21st Century Governments. I think he's retired, but his book is fantastic. And he challenged the board to be thinking about the fact that they needed to be looking for their replacement, and be willing to step off when they found that replacement. And they needed to diversify based on age and economics and racial. And so I had someone else come in and tell the board what they needed to do. And then I also started bringing in CEOs from around the country for community foundations, and having them share their community leadership journey to my board.
Yeah, terrific.
And
Those are great steps.
I just want to,
go ahead, Molly.
Last year, for the first time, we did a 2-day board retreat where we rented a bus and we took our board members across, several communities throughout our, within our 20 county service area. They spent 2 days going from community to community, and hearing the stories about, what did the fire recovery in the community of Malden, where we're part of the long-term recovery group, hearing from them what that journey was like. And a lot of the different things that for them to experience firsthand is huge.
And I would have, knowing the impact that journey had, I wish we had done that 2 years prior, because that was a game changer for them.
So what a great seed of knowledge for everyone on this call to get, things that you would have done different. And we can all start that today, everyone on this call. And Molly and Shelley, I could talk to you for another 2 hours. We are wrapping up our time together. There's some great questions still in the chat that we will try to answer offline. And just a few things as we close up today. First, thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first foray into CFLeads and community leadership, we really thank you for being with us. And we want you to know we are a partner for you on this journey. You do not have to be alone. There are so many ways. We have learning cohorts and topic sessions and a lot of connections with other community foundations who are on the same journey as you are. So we hope we can be a partner to help you achieve better results in your communities, because that's what we're all doing this job for, right? We want to see better outcomes in our communities. There's a few other links that are going to be dropped in to sign up for our newsletter. That's when you'll hear about all the different programs going on, registration links, as we have resources to share. That's kind of a hub, our newsletter and our website. A few upcoming dates for you: our Executive Leadership Institute that Shelley talked about. For CEOs, the application deadline for that is October 15th. These are small cohorts of CEOs from across the country that come together and share their aspirations and challenges with each other. It has been transformational for the folks who have gone through that. We also have a VP cohort that will be on recruiting later in the year, so that's an opportunity as well. We have a webinar on transforming data into action, unlocking potential with Opportunity Insights, one of our resource partners. It's on October 23rd. Our Connecting Communities in the Americas CCA program is having a webinar about building meaningful partnerships with their Latina and Latinx communities on November 14th. And again, subscribe to our newsletter. That's kind of the hub for everything we're doing. Shelley, Molly, thank you so much for joining us today. And what a lucky region that has you as a resource.
Thank you. Megan, can I just say to all of you on, the number one connection that you need to make, honestly, is to your peer community foundations. And I highly encourage you to do that through CFLeads. That's where your learning is coming from. We learned everything that we've done. We learned from our other community foundation partners, and we would not be where we are today if it was not for that learning from what everyone else is doing. And we did that through our relationship with CFLeads. So I cannot emphasize it enough I would just highly encourage you all to be involved in the webinars, the trainings, the forums, so that you can actually meet people in person.
Wonderful, Shelley. I really appreciate that. And we are looking forward to be partners with a whole host of new community foundations that joined us today. So thank you all for your time. Enjoy the rest of your days and upcoming weekends. And we hope to see you on another CF Leads webinar in the near future. Take care and thank you so much.